So, Ronnie, Del, how are we both?
Very well.
Good. Jolly good, yeah. That's it. Well, that's what we like to hear. Now, you're a similar age. You've both known the gentleman, the legend himself, for a long, long time. Ronnie, I think you've known him something like 50 years.
About 50 years, yeah.
And you, Del, about 40 odd years.
Well, I don't know. The first time I ever met Joe was at a pub called the Cottage of Content. They used to have a boxing ring there.
Yeah.
And he was in there with Alan Minter.
Yeah. Middleweight champion of the world.
It was before Minter was due to fight Agler.
Right.
And I was with a fella called Sid.
That was 1982, I think.
I can't remember the
no,
year.
maybe 81.
Yeah, I was about 27, I think, something like that.
Does that make sense, 41 years?
Yeah, could be, yeah.
Yeah.
But that was the first time I ever met Joe. And it was only the fellow I was with, Sid, his brother done his national service with Joe, yeah, and he introduced me to Joe, and I knew who Joe was. Everybody knew who Joey Pyle was. And then a long time went by, and then I came into Joe's company again and got really friendly with Joe, and I liked Joe. I've never met anybody like him. Before
really?
Or since, yeah.
Before or since?
Well, before or since, he was so genuine, it's not even true. I mean, you know, when you talk about Joe's old friends, you're talking about Ron, you're talking about people like Freddie Foreman, people like that.
Nashes.
And the Nashes who knew Joe years ago, before I ever did. But all I can say about Joey Pyle is that he was so genuine. He knew a lot of people, Joe. A lot of people.
Yeah.
And Joe, if I asked Joe, you know, a couple of times, did you know so and so? No, I didn't. He would never say he did if he didn't. But I remember going around Joe's house once at Christmas, and he said to me, "Look at that Christmas card, Del." And I looked at the card, and it was from Prince Rainier of Monaco. Prince Rainier, is it, of Monaco? Albert Rainier of Monaco. A Christmas card to Joe from him.
From the Prince of Monaco?
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
So this is the sort of people that Joe
So
knew.
what propelled Joe to notoriety? He was fairly commonly known. There was a killing in Islington, North London, where he was actually originally from, apparently.
Yeah.
Islington, just north of the city. And there was a killing in a club. And him in, I think, was it Johnny Nash or Jimmy Nash who was involved with the killing?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know it was one of them.
It was one of the Nashes, wasn't it? Was it Jimmy or Johnny?
Yeah.
I thought somebody said it was Johnny, but
I think it was Johnny, but I can't be sure.
Yeah, I can't be sure, yeah.
We're going back in the late 50s here.
When hanging was still in. Yeah.
And what had happened, they both faced the hangman's noose, and they were offered a deal by the police, both of them, to say that one had done it and vice versa. And they both told the old Bill to fuck off out of it. And in the meantime, excuse my French for the listeners, but in the meantime, I think Ruth Ferris became the last lady to become hung, and then or one of the last people, and then they went, right, we're abolishing hanging. So at least the retrial was a bit less pressure. They couldn't have got sent to the gallows for their crime, but they did get off on a retrial. And what propelled Joey out there was, if a man can face the ultimate punishment by death and he still stays staunch, and Johnny Nash respectively, and then the whole of the criminal world knew that there's a staunch man in Joey Pyle, and you then were introduced to that man as in yourself, just 16-year-old Ronnie. So what we're really paying tribute to, criminals are criminals, but we're paying tribute to a man that actually saved lives more than he was known as a great peacekeeper. He got between the Krays and the Richardsons. He could keep peace at all corners of London, couldn't he?
He could.
And even around the UK.
Yes, Scotland. Everyone respected Joe. If people had a problem and they didn't want it to go too far, but if it had to, it would. They'd go and see Joe, and Joe would go and sort it out and bring everyone together, whether it was two firms, two people, or whatever it was.
Yeah.
He never brought the old Bill and people together, but he
brought people together.
He brought people together, yeah.
You know, seriously now, I go to church a bit, yeah. And in the Bible it says God loves a peacekeeper, and he could bring peace where the potentially could be trouble. So he's really, I mean, when you say best loved gangster, he was bringing arguably peace and love in a situation where there would have been war.
That's right.
So surely that's got to be a thing why we love him, recognise him. Eh?
Joe told me a story once, and as I say, with Joey Pyle, I will say this to anybody, that Joey Pyle, I never knew him to lie about anything, right? If you ask him something, it was a yes or no, he would be straight. And he told me that when Reg's wife Frances died, Reg was, you couldn't do anything with him, and Ronnie Krays phoned Joe up and said, Joe, can you come over and have a word with Reg? I can't do anything, you know. And this is the sort of man Joe was. He could sort of sort people out. He had such a level head on him, Joe.
He had a special people skill, even in that industry.
He did. He was, as I said, I've never met anybody like him before or since. It was just something about Joey Pyle. He was staunch, you know, and anybody would tell you that. This is why he had so many friends. This is why, you know, everybody loved Joe. Anybody that knew Joe.
I love the story. Del or Ronnie, either you can tell it, but I've heard it before. I think it was a jockey, an horse racing jockey, that got done in some gambling, and they were sent to collect the debt. Tell us that story. You know it.
Well, the way I heard it is this: that I think he was a jockey.
You heard this from Joe, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he owed.
So we now know it's true.
Yeah,
That's right. Yeah.
He owed some money. He was a gambler, and he was into Joe for quite a bit of money. And anyway, he hadn't paid the money. They had him in a car, and the idea was he was going to be dealt with. And Joe turned around and said to him, you know, how much can you give me off the money that I owe you? And he said, Joe, I haven't got any money, mate. He said, I've not done it on purpose. And Joe said, well, you know what's got to happen to you? He said, I can't have people owing me money, you know. So he said, yeah, I know that, Joe. And then apparently Joe stopped the car, told him to get out and go. And I said, why did you do that? He said, well, the man was a man. He said, I knew that he hadn't done it on purpose. He weren't trying to have me over. He was just a gambler. He said he didn't cry, he didn't plead for his life, he didn't do anything like that. And he said, Joe, when I can pay you back, I'll pay you back. He said, so I had respect for him. So I let him go. He said, and he did pay me back eventually.
Oh, there you go. But you see a lot of movies, especially in America, they've had one in the nut and game up. But love and compassion, and he see fit from a man being a proper man.
Yeah.
And couple that with all his peacekeeping, as you say, that's heading towards respect, legend. So you know him from a young boy, Ronnie, from about 16, a fairly young boy.
Yeah, 16.
And did he, in your life, did he play sort of like a? I know he was a role model, did you become a criminal? Was he like a father figure as well?
Not a father figure, no. I respected him very much.
Yeah.
Very much respected him, yeah.
Yeah.
I think I would have done anything for Joe, really. I think as he would have had anything done for me. He showed me what is right and wrong, you know what I mean?
Right and wrong, yes. Yeah, so a great guy. It's like
in our world.
Yeah.
What was right and wrong.
Yeah.
You know,
give you great direction.
Pardon?
Give you great direction.
Yes.
In the field you're in.
If Joe told you something, it was true. If he said someone had done something, it was true. If he said they deserved something, they did.
So his rules and laws were bang on. In that sense, yeah. I mean, it's a bit like
other people like Fred and that. You know, the rules were the rules. Fred lived by them, and Joe lived by them. Fred still does live by, of course, and Fred's still with us. And so did all the other, you know, couple of families. They all lived by the rules. Everyone knew the rules. And Joe told me the rules, and that's the way we lived. That's the way I've lived my life.
Many years ago, a young girl got run over in an accident, and she didn't get killed, but she was badly injured, a young schoolgirl. And the parents went to Joe and said, we want the driver sorted out, you know. And Joe said, this is how I'm saying, what a fair man, and how level-headed Joe was.
This is true, very true.
He said, all he's guilty of is being a bad driver. It wasn't done with any malice. He didn't grab your daughter off the street and try and hurt her or injure her in any way. What he did do was, he's just a bad driver, which he's been nicked for. He said, so no, I won't be doing anything. Yeah. And that is how fair Joe was, and this is why people loved him, because he was such a fair man.
So he was completely judgmental. Whilst he's very sympathetic, of course,
yeah.
He don't want this to happen to the young girl or child, but he's sympathetic, but he's seeing fair and fit.
Yeah.
And it's arguably, and I think if you've got that in your makeup, which he clearly had to an abundance, that's what makes him the legend. Yeah.
Joe was loved by everyone, I think. I mean, people he had around him, like Mitch and Warren, they loved Joe. You know, anyone who knew Joe really knew him, loved him, because they knew what a fair man he was. And how, you know, I can't put it in words what Joe was like. You'd have to really know him to know what he was really like. And
there was a young boy who was a friend of ours, and he got brain cancer. Krays, his name was, and Joe organised a whip round and that, and we collected a load of money, and we sent him to Disneyland. And while he was in Disneyland, American guys over there paid for an operation, and he had the operation, and he survived, and he only died a couple of years ago. And this young boy, through what was done by Joe and other people, he lived another 20 years. Oh. And he had about, he had about 8 million cards sent to him from the President of America, Maggie Thatcher, everyone in the country sent him a get well card. He had millions of them.
Well, how good is that?
Yeah,
and that's what a touch. I don't get any more loving than that.
Craig Sheargold, his name was. He just died a little couple of years.
God bless him. What a great story. Well, thank God for Joey Pyle. And the American gentleman that jumped in through Joey, well, collectively through Joey's channel, he lived 20 plus years. Now, how precious is that?
Yeah, sent him to. We all had a bit round and sent him to Disneyland. You know what I mean?
Yeah, how fantastic! What a great story.
They never mention them sort of things when they're.
When they're sending you down
on trial, no, they never mentioned the good things.
No, exactly. Beyond all this love, which was clearly there, and it's been illustrated there, he clearly had another side. Early on, he got off on this murder charge, and he once actually said to me, he accidentally heard me, and stalks to the end always. I said about the nightclub murder that him and Johnny Nash got off on. I said, what did he get killed with? And he thought I said, who killed him? And he says, I'd never ever say that ever, I'll go to my grave. So anyway, I went, no, I called him uncle, because I respected him. He was an older man to me and a gentleman, and I called him uncle and said to Mr. Pyle, that's the way I do it. And I went, Uncle Joe, I didn't ask who killed him, I asked what did he get killed with. He said, it was a gunshot wound. So so he had this notoriety of obviously being a gangster, because he's a gangster of course, but he was seeing the love inside. But how could the love we see, okay, that was in these sort of earlier days, late 50s, when that murder happened, and many believe, he never say, and nobody said, many believe it was Johnny Nash done it. We don't know, because we weren't there, but they're both acquitted of murder. That we do know. Moving forward, how did he possess this loving way but still have the power to be able to cross between fearsome people like the Krays, the Richardsons, the Nashes, and all other up and coming gangsters, and he can just go right through the middle and bring people together. So he must have had an awful lot of clout. There must have been a switch there that most people wouldn't see. We see a very dapper, smart, nice-looking, well-dressed man. There must have been something there.
Charisma.
Yeah.
He had a charisma.
He had an aura about him.
And as Joe said about that killing, no one murdered him, he walked in front of a bullet. That's what Joe always said, didn't he?
Yeah.
No one killed him, he walked in front of a bullet.
Yeah.
But when they was on
He still said no one killed him. He said to me, boys.
I know when they was on remand, and I remember Joe saying to me that, you know, hanging was still in it, so they could have been hung. And he said to him, and I'm not sure if it was Jimmy or Johnny Nash, I can't remember, but whichever one it was who was with Joe, who got charged with Joe, and he said that he used to like wind Joe up. He used to go to Joe like that.
He said get the screw to put the newspaper under Joe's door, and there'd be a little noose in it, made out of string and everything. And they walked around the exercise yard going. And the screw, after about 4 times round, the screw said, why do you keep going like that? And he said, we're building our neck muscles up. They didn't care.
And still had a massive sense of humour. Facing that, most people would fall that naturally. But there was a very brave man in that. And that takes a special bravery, to come up to that, because he was facing the ultimate test. But they also, I mean, he was what I would say. He was the epitome of other gangsters and wannabe gangsters. Like when I say wannabe, I don't mean to use the word wannabe. I mean gangsters that were gangsters. They epitomised Joey Pyle, because he literally covered the whole field. He managed top musicians. He managed world champion boxers. He had fingers in so many different pies, didn't he?
He did.
And
look who sang at his graveside. Oliver Chatham. And what was her name, the girl?
Jocelyn
Brown.
Jocelyn Brown, who had a massive #1 hit, I think, with somebody else's guy.
Get Down Saturday Night. Get Down Saturday Night. It was Oliver's, and the two of them had a hit together. I can't think what it was now.
Yeah.
But they sung by his graveside.
By his graveside, right to the end. So
right
there. If but maybe.
And I ruined a good suit that day.
Yeah.
Pissed with rain, and I was smothered in
I remember it come chuck down with rain.
It was a privilege. It was a privilege.
Yeah. I'd say circumstantially completely honoured.
Yeah.
I was good for you. I'm sure you earned your own stars and stripes in the nicest way.
Young Joe said to me, I'd like you to carry my dad's coffin. I said, it's an honour.
Yeah.
I was there when he died, and it was an honour to see him, to go in the ground. You know, I didn't want to see him go in. As Fred said, it was horrible. Lowered him into the water. The grave was half full of water, you know what I mean, and it was horrible to do it. But we had to go. And,
but it's a final, it's a final.
That was it.
You final goodbye. But there was.
Roy Shaw was crying. I was crying. It was just.
And you think how hard a man. I know exactly what you are. Your stature in life, and one of Britain's leading criminals. You're on the same.
I wouldn't quite say that.
Well, you're up there and out there. You've got legendary status yourself, absolutely. But to see yourself in tears, you know, when you've been to work and you've been convicted of shooting people, you have a rough, tough side to you. But when a man brings tears to you, and Roy Shaw is supposedly pulled prison doors off its hinges.
Oh,
he's a fierce man. I knew Roy. He's a strong-looking man to the end.
Oh,
but all of that strength goes to tears, and it comes down to love.
Yeah.
And how do you think he managed all of that? As you say, you had a wonderful people skill. Now we talk about gangsters. I think I read somewhere that he had over the pond influence with the Genovese and Gambino family. He could pull all the London firm together, but to have such power and respect even from over the pond in New York, because I think he went on his toes, I think, from the UK, and he went over to America, and he got to know and they forever. Tell us a bit about that, Ron, please.
Well, I think Del can tell you more about that than me. I I know he was friends with Gotti.
I can only go by like what Joe told me.
That's all I can go by.
And Joe was living in Palm Springs in the States.
That's right, yeah, Palm Springs. Yeah.
And he said to me, I was up the road from Liberace, the piano player. A lot of youngsters won't know who that is, but he was a famous piano player, big showman in the States. And Joe was living out there. And that's how he met the mafia, as I know it.
Yeah.
You know, that's what Joe said. That was when he first started getting involved with them and all that. And then I remember Tony Lambriano saying to me one day, he said that, you know, when they say about the twins and the mafia and all that, he said the mafia link in London was Joey Pyle.
They're not the twins.
Yeah.
Joe introduced the twins.
Because in the original Krays film, they led it to believe that it was the connection that they had heard of the twins, but it weren't. It was Joey Pyle.
Well, Tony, like he worked for the twins, didn't he? Tony Lambriano.
Yeah. Yeah, he's convicted part of their gang with his brother Chris.
That's right.
He's a lovely man.
Yeah, I had a privilege of meeting him once, and he was a gentleman there, nice fellow.
Yeah, and you know, that was from Tony's mouth. He said, you know, the mafia connection in London was Joey Pyle.
So they remained as staunch as ever, Joe, and staunch to him. At his massive funeral, the Genovese and Gambino family respectively sent, I think they call them captains or sort of, in the right word, I can't think of the right word, understudies from their bosses, but captains over to his funeral. Because probably Gotti was in prison then, I can't remember, but he would have been, wouldn't he?
Yeah,
but they sent from the Gambino family their thing representing.
Yeah. Didn't they send a message over to say they was having a party for Joe?
They did, yeah, they did, yeah.
Some club.
Well, there you go. How nice is that? So it wasn't only we'll send somebody over. They actually partied.
Yeah.
Staunch to the end, but he could also bring people together from all parts of the UK. You got a story about the more recent legendary gangster Paul Ferris in his one of his biographies. Tell us about that.
Well, in his book, he says in there, Paul Ferris said, I came down to London. I went to North London to see the Adamses. I went to South East London to see the Harriffs and the Brindles. And then I went to Malden in Surrey and met the Don of the Dons, Joey Pyle. That's what he called Joey Pyle, the Don of the Dons.
Really,
and also in his book, he said, when we're all gone and forgotten about, people will still talk about Joey Pyle. That's what he said in his book.
And that's true. Yeah.
Well, that's wonderful. In a quick sum up, in a few words, tell yourself, your great friend that we're still talking about, I think he's gone 12 years now.
Yeah,
approximately more, maybe less.
When did he die? 2007, was it?
7, yeah.
So around the 15-year mark, so approaching a decade and a half.
Yeah.
Your close friend. In a few words, sum him up to the fans at home, Joey Pyle, amongst how will he stand amongst other gangsters in the UK. We can't really compare to the American gangsters, it's not our style. How do we compare to the gangsters here? How would you sum him up?
Well, all I can say with Joe is he was staunch, he was genuine, and he was respected by other gangsters. And, you know, I know that when I've been to things with Joe at Caesars and that, and you've got gangsters, if you want to call them that have come down from up north, they've all shown their respects to Joe. He was respected by everybody because of the man he was. He was just a genuine, lovely man. I mean, he was powerful, but he was genuine. You know, he was, you didn't have to be anybody to talk to Joe. If you was in a pub, you don't have to be a gangster or a villain. You could be Joe Bloggs. Joe would talk to you if he was okay. If you weren't okay, then he wouldn't have you.
He would never either one.
No. But you didn't have to be anybody special for him to talk to you.
So just a lovely human being.
He was a lovely
his profession so happened to be criminality, but we've seen the love inside him. Ronnie, how would you sum him up?
He was just a lovely man, very loyal, well respected by everybody. You only had to go to his dues when he was dying, and we were collecting for him to see the people that turned up, and the people that turned up at his funeral.
Fantastic, and that says it all. Well, I think, as I said, I've seen the Krays funeral on television. In all due respect, massive. I was at Joey's funeral. It's the biggest funeral I've ever seen in my life, and I think it outweighed all of them. And not a competition in that state, but I think the man in question really did stack up. He's one of Britain's best loved ever gangsters, and long will live. And if I can just join you the other side, boys, to raise a glass in lovely memory. Long live the legend, Mr. Joey Pyle.
Yeah, always.
He's
I also had the privilege of knowing a little bit, not as much as these guys.